Hello and welcome to another IELTS prep video. In this video, we're looking at a student's essay. This essay was submitted to me by one of my online students. The essay that the student submitted to me was in response to this essay question. The age of information technology has taken a lot of people by surprise. While it has become a way of life for some, others know very little about it. Eventually, we will have a polarized society, and this will lead to serious social problems. Form an opinion based on the info above and write a well-reasoned essay. Okay, now before we get to the student's essay, let's discuss this question together and make sure that we understand it completely. Now, first of all, this phrase in here, taken a lot of people by surprise. Sometimes these sorts of phrases can be a little bit confusing, but to take somebody by surprise, it just means to surprise them. So this is the age of information technology has surprised many people. Now the next part reads, while it has become a way of life for some, others know very little about it. So this sentence is outlining that in society what the sentence is saying is that there's two groups of people. There are people who understand technology, and there are people who do not understand technology. Okay, now the third sentence, eventually we will have a polarized society, and this will lead to serious social problems. Now this word polarized, and it's underlined in red, I think that's because this is the British spelling, and this program is an American computer program. But this word polarized means at opposite ends. So for example, polarized is like north and south, opposite ends, or east and west, or two things that are kind of opposite from each other. So the meaning is that eventually, after a long time, we will have two major groups in society that will be very far from each other. And this is relating back to what it was saying up here, this sentence before it, that in the future, the two groups in society will be, one group will be of people that understand technology, and the other group will be of people who do not understand technology. And what this sentence is arguing is that this will lead to serious social problems. So that in the future, if there's a group of people, if a large group of people understand technology and a large group of people don't understand technology, this will create problems for society as a whole. Kind of far-fetched, but that's the question. Now, the instruction words say to form an opinion based on the info above and write a well-reasoned essay. Okay, and so this is asking us to create an argument essay. We're supposed to take this information, we're supposed to create an argument, and we are supposed to support that argument in our writing. Okay, so I hope that the question makes sense now. So basically, I'll just summarize the question once really quickly. So the question is saying that that technology is a very major thing in the world today, but that it's not understood by everyone in a society. It's only understood by a select group of people, and then there's another group of people that do not understand technology, and what this is saying is that in the future, those two groups of people will become further and further and further apart, and that this will create problems for society as a whole. Now let's look down below at the student's essay. Now here's the student's essay as it was submitted to me. Now I wanted to show you, let me just change the font size here so you can see the whole essay. Let's change that to 15. Oops, gotta make it even smaller. 1 second. Change that to 8. Okay. Now I know that that's not very clear, but I wanted to show you the shape of the essay. Now if you look here, you can clearly see that there are 4 paragraphs. But if this essay was written in this format in an IELTS exam, this essay would immediately lose marks. And can you guess why? The reason is that each paragraph is without indent. So when you write your essay, whoops, what's going on here? There. You should have each line indented. So I'm going to indent each of these lines. That's the first problem that would be noticed on the essay. Now the student did separate it into different paragraphs, which is helpful. And before we get into the details of it, I can also see just by looking at the essay that they do link all of the paragraphs together. So you can see firstly and furthermore, spelled incorrectly, but we'll correct that later, furthermore, and then I can see down here in conclusion. So when we look at the essay as a whole, we can see that the shape of it is now correct after we've stuck in these indent marks. Okay, let's look at the essay from the beginning as written by the students. Information technology has dramatically changed the way people live, interact, and work. Very nice background sentence. One of the main changes has been the introduction of computers to mainstream society. Okay? However, this current social setup had led to there being a few members who do not have computer access due to a lack of education as well as finance. This creates social problems. Okay, not sure if I totally understand, but I feel this is the student's attempt at a thesis. Now, if you remember in our essay question, it was saying that society will be polarized. Society will eventually have 2 groups of people, one that understands technology and one that doesn't, and that these groups of people will become very, very, very distant from each other, and this will cause major social problems. Now, it asks you to argue and to support that idea or to refute that. And for me, I would probably refute that. I don't think that that's something that's going to happen in the future. But I think from the way that this student has written this, these 2 sentences, I think that they're going to support this. So they're saying that this social setup has led to there being a few members who do not have computer access due to a lack of education as well as finance. I think I will change some of this though. I'm going to take out this part, and now again, this is not had, this is has, because it's continuing now. So however, this current social setup has left large pockets of people who do not understand the many uses of technology. Now the student, they mentioned for financial and for educational reasons, but I don't think we need to go that detailed, because as soon as we start saying that, then perhaps somebody reading this essay might think that that is what they're going to talk about in their supporting paragraphs, but that's not the case. So let me just read this again quickly. However, this current social setup has left large pockets of people who do not understand the many uses of technology. And this creates major social problems. Actually, I'm going to change this again. As this distances these people from the rest of society who do have who are educated in the many uses of technology, okay, it is believed major social problems are created. Let me just double check them. Making sense here. However, this current social setup has left large pockets of people who do not understand the many uses of technology. As this distances these people from the rest of society who are educated in the many uses of technology, it is believed that major social problems are will be created. The two main elements that will be analyzed are the educational as well as the employment factors. I think what this student is saying is that if you have a society that is polarized, so a large group of people understand technology thoroughly and a large group of people do not understand technology, that this will create problems in education for society as a whole and in employment. So let's see if we can clean this sentence up a little bit. The two main elements that will be analyzed in connection to these social problems are the educational as well as the employment ramifications. So the two main elements that will be analyzed in connection to these social problems are the educational as well as the employment ramifications. Ramifications sort of means results, so what will happen as a result of something. Okay, let's read the introduction paragraph from the beginning. Information technology has dramatically changed the way people live, interact, and work. One of the main changes has been the introduction of computers to mainstream society. However, this current social setup has left large pockets of people who do not understand the many uses of technology. As this distances these people from the rest of society who are educated in the many uses of technology, it is believed major social problems will be created. The two main elements that will be analyzed in connection to these social problems are the educational as well as the employment ramifications. Hi, I finished correcting the student's essay. I didn't realize that my screen recorder had stopped and I kept talking and correcting the essay, but unfortunately my voice was not being recorded. So what I think we'll do is we'll look at the student's essay as they wrote it and look at some ways that we can improve it, and then in the end I will show you the corrected version that I've put together. So let's read the first supporting paragraph. This is the student's writing. Firstly, the education sector has seen a huge shift in recent years. This is because computers require people to know how to operate the programs. If people have not been trained, they will be educationally disadvantaged. many believe that lack of computer knowledge will delay people's learning skills. Good point. For instance, most educational institutions require software knowledge like Microsoft Word and PowerPoint in order to facilitate the learning process. By looking at this example, it clearly shows that not knowing how to use a computer will result in educational problems in society. Okay, I think that there's a few good points that are brought up here by the students. One thing I noticed when I read through this the first time is that the student made a point of using 2 real-life examples, which I think is very, very strong. In your essay, if you can use real-life examples, not just sort of general information, but real-life examples, this will make your essay much stronger. So here they brought up Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, and they said that these are 2 important programs to know if you're a student studying at school. They said that this will help you perhaps do better in your studies. So I think that that was good. Now, one thing though I thought was a little bit unfortunate was that they brought up the example. So here's the sentence for the example. They brought it up quite late in the paragraph, because you can see they do some discussing up here and then they bring up the example. And I think that's difficult. It's difficult to write things that way. I think that the strongest way to write an essay is to first give your topic sentence, then show your example. Bring up your example that sort of proves your topic sentence, and then take the next sentence or two to discuss it. And finally, you have a conclusion sentence that links you back to the thesis. So what you'll see in the correction that I made is that I took this sentence and I put it after our topic sentence up above. And now the last sentence that they have here is, by looking at this example, it clearly shows that not knowing how to use a computer will result in educational problems in society. This is obviously discussing the example. This is not a conclusion sentence. So I also took this sentence and I put it behind the example. You'll see that in the corrections that I did. Now, one thing that this paragraph is missing, it's missing a reasoned conclusion sentence. If you remember from the other videos that I made, in your supporting paragraph, you want your last sentence to link back to your thesis. So if you remember, our thesis here is that we're saying that that we believe it is true that that if technology polarizes society, that this will cause a lot of problems. And we're basically saying that we think that it is true that society will become polarized in the future. So there's not really any mention of that in this last sentence. So what you'll see in the correction that I made is that I wrote a sentence that kind of links us back to this idea that indeed we do believe that in the future technology will polarize society. Okay, now one other thing, we'll go right back up to the top here, this topic sentence. So in the introduction paragraph that we corrected together, we said that the polarization of society was going to hurt education and hurt students' experience during their years of study. And I don't think that this sentence here really discusses that. They're talking about the past in this sentence, which I think is bizarre, because they're saying, first, the education sector has seen a huge shift in recent years. And that's not really to do with anything that the essay question asks. If you remember, the essay question was asking us to comment about the possibility of there being a polarized society in the future. It's not really asking so much for us to discuss the past. I know in the question it brings up that technology has become more and more prevalent in the world and this sort of thing, but that's just some background information. The real thing that they're asking us is, do we think that this is possible or not, that this polarization of society in the future? So I think that that this sentence would be best changed as well. Okay, now those are the main areas that I thought needed to be changed. So let me show you the changes that I made. So firstly, I indented the paragraph, of course. Let's read it from the beginning. Firstly, technological imbalances among society would cause major educational problems. For instance, most educational institutions require software knowledge of Microsoft Word and PowerPoint in order to facilitate the learning process for students. By looking at this example, it is clear that students who have not had a chance to learn how to use a computer and other technology would be less capable of educational achievements. Thus, a polarized society resulting from technological imbalances among people can be seen as possible. Now let's break it down from the top. So now you can see I've changed our topic sentence. Whoops. And like I told you before, I took the example that the student had at the bottom, which I thought was a pretty good example, and I stuck it up in here. So if, for instance, most educational institutions require software knowledge of Microsoft Word and PowerPoint in order to facilitate the learning process for students. This word facilitate means to make something easier. So the idea is that if a student knows how to use Microsoft Word and they know how to use programs like PowerPoint, this will make it easier for them to learn things. That's the example that we're giving. Okay, now I took their discussion sentence and I put it here. By looking at this example, it is clear that students who have not had a chance to learn how to use a computer and other technology would be less capable of educational achievements. So what we're saying is that if a student doesn't know how to use programs like Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, then they would have less of a chance of making achievements in their education. And then our last sentence links back up to our thesis. Thus, a polarized society resulting from technology imbalances among people can be seen as possible. Okay, now let's look at the student's second paragraph. Now, if you remember, the student said in their introduction paragraph that the second supporting paragraph would talk about employment problems that would result from a polarization of society based on technology inequalities. So let's read it from the beginning. Furthermore, computers are established tools in most industries. This creates social pressure for people who have not had opportunities to be trained in IT. One specific example is the architecture industry, which is currently strongly software based. Another industry that can illustrate this point is the hospital database system that can be retrieved from hospital to hospital in order to reduce handwritten reports and printed x-rays. This fact clearly demonstrates that if people do not adapt and upgrade their skills in IT, they may be risking unemployment. Okay, I think that this paragraph, it seems to give a lot of examples but not so much discussion. And see, personally, if I was to write this essay, I would not be bringing up examples like this. I would probably bring up an example like, say, the country of China, because the country of China, there really are people that live in the countryside and do not have access to technology. And the people that live in the more developed cities, they do have access to technology and they can learn all these new things, and that somewhat makes a little bit of an inequality between the people, because if you grow up in the countryside, it's difficult for you to make your way in the city because there's a lot of things technology-wise that you haven't experienced before. So for me, I would probably use an example, something like a country like China, or another country where there's large areas that are underdeveloped and some pockets that are a little bit more developed, and it'll show show how this is creating this this polarization within these societies. But I think what the student has done here is that they've decided to take this a different way, and I think the example of architecture is okay. But a lot of these, I mean, that's something, those are the kind of skills that you would learn at a specialized school. So you would study that at a university. So I'm not sure if that would really result because people didn't have access to technology. That might result because people didn't go to a specialized school. But yeah, so I'm not quite sure if either of those examples would be very strong. But anyways, we're going to use the architecture example in the corrected version, which you'll see in a minute. Now let's look at this topic sentence. Okay, furthermore, computers are established tools in most industries. Okay. So we know the student's trying to say that computers are used in many industries, and if you're not sure how to use computers, then that will be a problem because you won't be able to work in these industries, and that could result in the polarization of society. Down at the end, so some grammatical stuff here. Okay, people do not adapt or upgrade their skills, they may be risking unemployment. So again, there's not really any link back to our thesis, right? Because we're trying to show basically that a polarized society, in this essay, the student wants to show that a polarized society is possible based on inequalities in access to technology or understanding of technology. And in both of the supporting paragraphs, I didn't see any sentence that really linked us back to this idea. If we don't do that, then these paragraphs kind of sit in the middle of nowhere. They're not really connected to our essay and what our essay is trying to prove overall. Okay, let's take a look at the corrected version. So from the top, furthermore, computers are established tools in most industries. This creates social pressure for people who have not had opportunities to be trained in IT. One specific example is the architecture industry, which has a firm software base. For someone who has little to no access to basic modern technology, career paths such as this are impossible. These facts clearly demonstrate that if people do not adapt and upgrade their skills in IT, they may become increasingly unemployable in the modern world. Thus, the possibility of a polarized society due to rifts in technological understanding can be seen. Okay, so I took out the second example that the students had in their original essay, and I kept this part in here. Normally, you'd want to put the example right after the topic sentence, but the student had a few good ideas, and so I just thought I'd keep that. So the example comes here. So one specific example is the architecture industry, which has a firm software base, and then I thought of adding this sentence in here. So in my mind, I was kind of thinking more about, like I was saying before, a country like China, where perhaps somebody is not from one of the more developed areas, and growing up they had no access to basic technology in the modern world, and because of that, that can create issues and barriers that make careers such as becoming an architect next to impossible. Okay, and then I continue to talk about it down here. So basically, these facts clearly demonstrate that if people do not adapt and upgrade their skills in IT, they may become increasingly unemployable in the modern world. I like this little bit here. So if someone is growing up in the world today, 2009, and they don't know some basic ways to use modern technology, then that can render them unemployable. And then I use that. I use this word thus, which I'm linking back to this idea here. So I use that to link the idea to, well, if this is happening and you are not employable in the modern world, this could create a polarization and could cause future problems. So thus, the possibility of a polarized society due to rifts. Rifts are like separation. So due to rifts in technological understanding can be seen. Here's the conclusion paragraph. I've tried to retain some of the students' original writing in this paragraph. In conclusion, after analyzing the areas of education and employment, it has now been shown that information technology is splitting society and will ultimately result in social conflicts. So here we see the summary of the two supporting paragraphs, and the restatement of thesis together in one sentence. If government institutions do not make an effort to lead educational campaigns promoting IT skills among those who are left behind, these potential problems will quickly become reality. And here the student has chosen to use a recommendation to conclude their essay. Okay, so that concludes the correction of this student's essay. I hope you found it helpful, and thank you for listening.